I'm pleased to see you all in my channel, Level Up For You. If you go in outer space, then you will, without any protection, you will die immediately. You all know that. Because the lack of pressure would force the air in your lungs to rush out. Gases dissolved in your body fluids would expand, pushing the skins apart and forcing it to inflate like a balloon. And your eardrums and capillaries would rupture and your blood will start bubbling and boiling like hot water. And even if you survived all that, ionizing radiation would rip apart the DNA in your cells. Mercifully, you would be unconscious in 15 seconds. But do you know a group of animals exist on Earth who can survive all this? And not only this, if you boil them, crush them, blast them, send them into space without oxygen or nothing, they can all survive it. So today we are going to talk about such an animal group which are very special and unique. So if you want to know about these animal group, stay tuned and let's start. Tiny creatures named tardigrades are about 1 mm long, and in 2007 thousands of tardigrades were attached to a satellite and have been blasted to outer space. And when the satellite came back to Earth, the scientists examined all the tardigrades and they found that most of them had survived, and even some females have laid eggs, and the young tardigrades were also very healthy. And not just this, they can survive in most of the harsh environments present on the Earth. For example, they were discovered in 5,546 meters high in the Himalayas, and they were found near a hot spring in Japan and at the bottom of the ocean, and they can also live in Antarctica. And they can withstand huge radiation, like they can be boiled up to 150 Celsius. Can you imagine so much heat? And they can even be cooled to about 0 degrees Celsius. Now, how can these creatures who are extremely so small can survive these extreme conditions and have developed these superpowers? Actually, tardigrades have many tricks in their sleeves, which will put almost all the organisms on the Earth into shame. Firstly, tardigrades are intimidating. They have pudgy faces with layers and layers of flesh, and like Doctor Who monster. And they have 8 legs with ferocious claws which almost represent the bears. And their mouth is also a serious weapon with a dagger-like teeth to spear prey. But there is no need to worry, because they are extremely small and they are also almost the Earth's smallest creatures, and they can be only spotted with a microscope. And they do not grow more than 1.5 mm long and can only be seen through a microscope, as I told you. They are commonly known as water bears. There are 900 total species of tardigrades, and most of them feed on or suck the juices of moss and algae, and others are carnivorous and can also feed on other tardigrades. And they are completely ancient, and their fossils have been found about 500 which are old about 500 million years ago, in which in that time the first complex animals were evolving, and when they were ever found, it was clear that they are special. Tardigrades were discovered in 1773 by a German scientist named Johann August Ephraim Goeze. 3 years later, the Italian clergyman and scientist Lazzaro Spallanzani discovered that they had superpowers. Because Mr. Spallanzani added water to a sediment from the rain gutter and looked under in a microscope. And when he observed, he found hundreds of little bear-shaped creatures swimming around. In his book, Opuscoli di Fisica Animale Vegetabile, he named them ʻtɑːrdɪɡreɪd, meaning slow stepper, because they were extremely slow. And in truth, it wasn't at first. Because back in 1702, the Dutch scientist Anton van Leeuwenhoek sent a letter to the Royal Society in London and entered on certain animalcules found in the sediment in the gutters on the roofs of the house. He took a dry, apparently lifeless dust from gutter and added water. Using a microscope of his own devising, he found that within an hour many small animals became active and began swimming and crawling around. These animals were rotifers and tiny aquatic creatures that look like they have wheels in their head and they could seemingly survive months without water. But in the case of tardigrades, they can survive decades and decades without water. And in 1948, the Italian zoologist Tina Franceschi claimed that tardigrades found in dried moss from museum samples over 120 years old could be reanimated. After rehydrating a tardigrade, she observed one of its front legs moving, and this finding has never been replicated, but it does not seem impossible. In 1995, dried tardigrades were brought back to life after 8 years. Just imagine, dead tardigrades back to life after 8 years. And for most animals, life without water is completely impossible. When a typical cell dries out in membranes and rupture and leaks, its proteins unfold and aggregate together, making them useless. And DNA will also start to fragment the longer it is dry. Somehow tardigrades all avoid this. This is why they were brought back to life after they are dried after 8 years. And since water bears can survive drying, they must have tricks for preventing or fixing the damaged cells like ours would die from. How do they do it? One of the key discoveries came in 1922, and the courtesy of a German scientist named H. Baumann. He found that when a tardigrade dries out, it retracts its head and its 8 legs, and it then enters a deep state of suspended animation that closely resembles death. Shedding almost all the water in its body, the tardigrade curls up into a dry husk. He found that, and he called this torn shame from, but it is now commonly known as tun. Its metabolism slows to about 0.01% and of the normal rate. It can stay in state for decades, only reanimating when it comes in contact with. Besides tardigrades, some nematode worms, yeast and bacteria can also survive desiccation. They do this by making a lot of particular sugar called trehalose. This sugar from a glass-like state inside their cells can stabilize key components such as proteins and membranes which would otherwise be destroyed. And trehalose can also wrap itself around any remaining water molecules, stopping them from rapidly expanding if the temperature continuously rises. And rapidly expanding water molecules are dangerous because they can rupture cells, which can be extremely dangerous and fatal. And you might expect that tardigrades would use this trick to survive drying, but according to both BI, only some species seem to make tree hulls. Some species do not appear to contain tree hulls or make it at such low levels that sugar is undetectable. And this suggests that tardigrades might have unique tricks for surviving desiccation, and they have their own trick to survive this problem. And we know that as they start to dry out, tardigrades make protectants that allow them to survive becoming completely dry. But what exactly these protectants are is still a mystery, and still now scientists are trying to solve it. Actually, when tardigrades start to dry out, they produce lot of antioxidants like vitamin C and E and other chemicals which can mop out other harmful chemicals in the cells. And tardigrades face a particular threat from reactive oxygen species. These substances are produced as byproducts of normal cell function, but can break down the main components of the cell, and including its DNA. And animals exposed to environmental stress often have lots of floating around. And the antioxidant may explain one of the tardigrade's neatest abilities. If a tardigrade stays in its dry turn state for a long time, its DNA gets damaged. But after it reawakens, he is so fast in recovering it that he can recover it. Just after some time, he has reawakened. And it's clear that tone state is the key to tardigrade's ability to cope with being dried out. But long before Baumann discovered it, tardigrades had revealed other superpowers also. And for starters, they seem not to care what temperature it is. In 1842, a French scientist named Darrow showed that tardigrades in this tone state could survive being heated to temperatures about 125 degrees Celsius. And in the 1920, a Benedictine friar named Gilbert Franks Raman brought tardigrades back to life after heating it up to 151 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes. If you'll boil a water for 15 minutes, then the water will be like gone. But they are heated up to 150 degrees Celsius for 15 minutes, but they are brought back to life. Can you imagine that? And Rahman also tested them in the cold. He immersed them in liquid air at minus 200 degrees Celsius for 21. Can you imagine? 21 months means almost 2 years. And in liquid nitrogen at minus 253 for 26 hours. And in liquid helium at minus 272 for 8 hours. Afterwards, the tardigrades sprang back to life as soon as they got into contact with water. Wow. We now know that some tardigrades can tolerate being frozen to minus 272.8 8 degrees Celsius, just above absolute zero. And to put that in perspective, the lowest temperature ever recorded on Earth was, blame me, minus 89.2 Celsius in central Antarctica in 1983. Now imagine if the tardigrades are living in Antarctica, they'll be like, so easy, because they can survive up to minus 272 degrees Celsius. Then minus 89.2 is just like a baby in front of them. And the tardigrades cope with profound chill that does not occur naturally and must be created in the lab, at which atoms come to virtual standstill. The biggest hazard tardigrades face is cold is ice. The ice crystals from inside the cells, they can tear apart in crucial molecules like DNA. Some animals, including some fish, make anti-freeze proteins that lower the freezing point of their cells, ensuring that ice doesn't form. But these proteins haven't been found in tardigrades. Instead, it seems that tardigrades can produce ice crystals in their cells, but they did not let these ice crystals to damage them or can quickly repair it. And tardigrades may produce chemicals called ice nucleating agent. These encourage ice crystals to form outside their cells rather than inside, protecting the vital molecules. Tree hollow sugar may also protect those that produce it, as it prevents the formation of large ice crystals that would perforate the cell membrane. But while we have some idea of how tardigrades cope with this cold, we have no idea that how they cope with heat. And at scorching temperatures like 150 degrees Celsius, and proteins in cell membrane should unravel and the chemical reaction that sustain life cease to happen. The most heat tolerant oxygen known are bacteria that live around the edges of the hydrothermal vents in the deep sea. They can still grow at 122 degrees Celsius. And tardigrades can survive even in higher temperatures. And many animals that had evolved to live in hot places like hot springs and scorching deserts produce chemicals called heat shock proteins. And these act as chaperones for proteins inside cells, helping them to keep their shape. They also repair heat damaged proteins. That's all well and good. Yeah, but there is no conclusive evidence that tardigrades produce these chemicals also. Factors in the other things they can survive, and the picture becomes even more baffling. And in 1964, scientists exposed tardigrades to lethal doses of X-rays and found that they can survive that even. And later experiments showed that they can also cope with excessive amounts of alpha, gamma and ultraviolet radiation, even if they are not in tune state. Radiation was one of the biggest threats facing the tardigrades sent into space in 2007. These exposed to higher levels of radiation fared worse than those protected. But the mortality rate was 100%. And they can also cope with extreme pressure that would squish most animals flat. And to a study published in 1998 by Kunihiro Seki and Masato Toshiya University in Hituka, Japan, they found that tardigrades in this tone state could survive a pressure of 600 megapascals. The reason that they can live on land, this is why they can survive drought. Then why can't humans develop this ability? And the reason for this is that similarly, why can't other animals survive the heat, cold and radiation that tardigrades can? Perhaps the question isn't why tardigrades are so tough, but why other animals are so vulnerable. There are probably several reasons why more animals and plants have involved tardigrades' ability. Many animals probably just don't need to, because they either don't live in environments that can quickly dry out, or they can develop ways of avoiding dry out, like the camel. But beyond that, there are surely costs to tardigrades' abilities, costs that other animals have avoided paying. In particular, going into the tun state is a risky decision, because when tardigrade completely dries out, it becomes inactive and is unable to actively avoid danger in its surroundings. An inactive tardigrade might not die of thirst, but it could get eaten. And we know that a lot of desiccation tolerant organisms have to make exoprotectants, molecules that keep bacteria and fungi from basically eating them while they are in inactive state. It may be that becoming as tough as a tardigrade wouldn't pay off for other animals, but it has worked for them. They are 500 million years old and live all over the planet, so they are not going anywhere. With these lines, I would like to end today's video. So if you have liked today's amazing topic, then give us a like and subscribe our channel, and for proper updates, press the bell icon too. And if you can suggest a topic, I will be very glad to make a video on it. So it's all for today. Till then, goodbye.